Hello and welcome to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very special episode, and before we get into it, I need to thank the folks over at Armament Technologies Incorporated out of Halifax, Canada. Who are they, you might be asking? You ever heard of Tenebrex, Elkin, Tangent Theta? They are the individuals responsible for those very famous and, quite frankly, stellar brands. They are based out of Canada in Halifax, and it's because of that they were able to get their hands on a large shipment of these Unertl C3 Canadian sniper scopes. So, Armament Technologies Incorporated and everyone over there, thank you so much for making this video possible. Because when I heard that they had a small batch of these in stock that they were selling, I reached out to them and had to find out if I can get my hands on one to test out. For years, I had seen tons of USMC branded Unertl 10X scopes be sold for $4,000–$5,000 sometimes. So when I saw that ATI had these in stock, I had to ask if I can borrow one. And like ATI has done in the past for me, they were more than happy to oblige. Now, if you are interested in purchasing one of these, go to armament.com. They're $2,500, and they are selling them in batches of 10 per week or so, and they only have a very limited supply. Now, if you do go to their website and see that they're currently out of stock, just put in your email and you will hopefully get put on the mailing list. As far as what was touched with these optics from Armament, it was only the turrets. They cleaned them up and reworked them to make sure that everything was working perfectly, and that's really it. And from my hands-on experience with this thing for the last 2 weeks or so, I have to say it's really, really impressive. On to the price. These are $2,500 for a near 50-year-old scope. That sounds like a lot of money, but like I said, these are very limited production scopes. Now, if you do like what the scope has, but you don't want to buy something that's 50 years old, good news for you is US Optics is running a small batch of their MST-100s, which is the USMC variant of this, for $3,600. So if you're at home right now and you're going, why would someone buy this scope for $2,500? I mean, it's 50 years old. Well, you're clearly not the person intended for this optic. You see, unless you're a historian or you're really into firearms history or you're trying to build the perfect replica sniper rifle, this won't really make a whole lot of sense. Not when you can buy an SWFA fixed Gen II 10X for $350. The reason someone would buy this is because it's owning a piece of military history. Sure, there were other sniper rifles with other magnified optics well before this started coming to production, but none of them made such a deep impact as the Unertl 10Xs. In fact, these were the first scopes to have a mil-dot reticle. That basically changed the game. And the turrets, this is an effective BDC that was very capable out to 800 meters. You buy this because you want a piece of history, or you're looking to build the absolute perfect replica rifle. Or you just like to have really heavy things, because this is a steel tube. So with all that being said, come on in closer. Let's take a better look at this thing and get behind it and see what it's actually like to use. And here it is, ladies and gentlemen, in the flesh. The first thing you have to know is that this thing is not lightweight. In fact, this thing is insanely heavy. That is because the main body, the tube, is made out of steel. And on my scale, it comes in at 35.6 ounces. That's a lot of weight. But this was not designed to be lightweight. It was designed to be as durable and as capable as possible as far as being held by a bunch of grunts out in the jungle to withstand, abuse. It comes in just under 12 inches long. And to put that in retrospect with a modern short optic, the PLXC in first focal plane is a very short optic, and this Unertl is not that much longer. That makes this scope even that much more impressive in my eyes. Even more so when we look at the overall simplicity of this and to really think about how effective this was for as long as it was. It's really quite beautiful. Starting at the back, we do have an adjustable eyepiece. This is locking and not really that intuitive. You unscrew the back, then this splined ring is your fine tune for your reticle, and then you just come over here and you gotta lock it up. It's a two-handed ordeal, but once you're done with that, you lock it up. That's really it. There's nothing else to it. As far as the rear glass, you can see that this does have a few scratches on it, as does the objective lens. It's not the cleanest, but again, given this thing's age, I'm really surprised to see that it's as clean as it is. You can absolutely tell that some of the anti-reflective coatings on the front of this have been worn off, as well as any other coatings that are on it, which is part of the reason why I reckon that the optics on this perform the way that they do. Not perfect. But again, nothing about this optic was changed or touched by Armament Technologies except for the turrets, which we're going to get to in just a moment. There is a parallax adjustment. This front ring, you'd unscrew this. You usually use a special tool, but you can come in here with anything that would fit inside those two slots and twist that loose. And then this is how you set your parallax. I didn't touch this because I figured it came set from the factory. I got it as close as I could to the eyepiece being perfect, and I ran with it. I did have a bit of a tough time fine-tuning my eye relief, but I got it again, I'd say within 90%, and that's all I wanted to say before we move any further. The last thing that we have to talk about, or rather the last thing we can talk about, are the turrets. And we're going to start with the windage turret. This is in mils. The reticle inside the mil dot is in mils. This is in mils for the Canadian variant, which is the C3 Sniper. The USMC versions, or rather the non-C3 variants, were in MOA. So you had MOA turrets, and I believe still a mil dot reticle, which is why you had a bit of an issue with MOA to mil dot. So technically, these C3s make more sense on paper. If you want to adjust this, you simply take that Allen key in the middle and turn it. There is a locking set screw right there, so loosen that up. You could fine tune this, and then once you lock that up, this is going to be, that's how you set 0. So there's no multiple tools needed. One set screw here, one hex here, and another one there, which is apparently a 0 stop, which I did not touch. You have a fair amount of adjustment on these. I don't know if the microphone's going to pick that up. But boy, does it sound and feel really solid. It goes to half clicks on these increments, which for me is perfectly fine. As far as the overall texture on these controls, more than accessible, more than easy enough to adjust. I really can't fault it. Now the elevation turret is a little bit different. On top we have a BDC, and on the bottom we have a fine tune, also known as a vernier. So let's say we're at right now 100 meters 0. Let's go 200. Let me try to get this where there's a little better light. 300, 4, 5, 6, 7, 800 meters. And that's where it goes. I want to say the USMC versions went to 1,000 yards, but I could be wrong. Anyway, what we would do now if we had to fine tune it from 800 meters is adjust this in a much finer scale to try to make up the difference. As you can see, you have down, indicated by the red arrow, and up, indicated by the yellow arrow. It's a little tricky trying to get your finger across the top of this to adjust this, especially when there's a ring in the way. With my ADM Recon mount, I could not really get in there to adjust this all that well. It was very not intuitive. But as far as setting your 0 on the elevation turret, the exact same setup as the windage. We have a locking set screw over here, and then you come in here with an Allen key and you adjust it, lock that back up, and that is how you set your 0. It's simple, it's foolproof, it's bulletproof. I want to say there was one individual, the quote was, you could drive spikes with this, and I believe they actually did, and it would still hold 0. That's what it was. And I absolutely believe it. Nearly 36 ounces of solid steel and very thick lenses. It's no wonder why these things are as legendary as they are. Seeing military service for over 50 years at this point, it's quite remarkable. And the fact that I have one of these in my hands is, well, Truly incredible. Before we go any further, a quick history lesson. Unertl Optics Company out of Morris, Pennsylvania was founded by John Unertl in 1928. The company was known for making externally adjusted scopes for precision shooters and varmint shooters. That was until World War II broke out and they made the 8X scopes for the United States Marine Corps. It wasn't until the early 1970s when the M40 became the M40A1 and the Redfield 3-9 was swapped out for this Unertl 10X. A rifle package that would see active duty until roughly 2007. The C3 Canadian sniper variant came about in the mid to late 80s when the Canadian military was looking to build out and outfit their new sniper rifles. And again, the only thing that was different between these and the ones used by the United States Marine Corps were the turrets, going from MOA to Milradian. 50 years of service, no matter what branch you're in, that's still very impressive. Call it what you want, but the reticle that you're looking at right now is Genesis. It is the very first milled out reticle to ever be produced in a rifle scope. Almost every modern day precision rifle scope has a reticle that's based off of this. That's saying something. As far as what we see, well, there's not a whole lot. You have a couple of mill dots in the middle on your windage and elevation, and some very thick posts at 3, 6, 9, and 12. All of which seem a bit skewed by today's standards, but still very effective and very easy to read and pick up in almost any environment. Because this is a fixed powered scope, there is no magnification adjustment, there is no illumination adjustment, and there's no parallax adjustment. So what you see here is what you get. As far as the view through it versus the scope body, I will illustrate what it looks like adjusting at one single pick slot. I got it as good as I could, but there is still a little bit more room for improvement. Overall, it's really not terrible. Armament says that the only thing that their technicians touched were the turrets, and I could attest to that. They feel like they're sliding on glass. It's so incredibly smooth, and the detent is so positive that it's hard to really quantify without you actually feeling it. Now, because this optic has a BDC, I had no way of knowing what the actual drops for each BDC marker would be. So we're going to find out what those are together in case you're curious. What I'm doing here is just moving the scope forward and back on my pick rail, so this way you could see just how vast the view through it changes. Unfortunately, I didn't have single 1-inch rings that I could mount and really fine tune it. My setup is still very rigid, and I'm going to be working on another rendition of it in the near future. But for right now, this is as good as I can get it. But to the naked eye, you can't really get it that much better. You can get a little bit less scope profile noticeable, but ultimately, this is really, really solid. The reticle does line up to my target extremely well, so I'm very happy to see that. After, 6+ decades, this reticle still lines up very well. But let's see how it's going to track. Now, this doesn't have incremental adjustments for the elevation as much as it has BDC compensation. So this would be technically on 100 meters 0, and then this would be 200 meters. So what is that? About 0.6 of a mil or so. Then 300 meters would be 1.7, I would guess. Then 4 would put us just shy of 3. I'm going to call that 2.9 mils. 5 is going to be just past 4. So what would that be? About 4.2, 4.3. 600 meters is exactly 7 mils. No, that's 6 mils. So 6 for 6. accurate. Then 7 mils on the turret is 8 mils on the target. And then if we go to 800, we are looking at just about 10 mils of total elevation gain, and that is where the elevation stops. So we can then just dial this back, and that is good. There is another ring on the bottom, which is used for incremental adjustments. It's a little hard for me to get in there. There's a little cattail that comes off the back of the turret. That's 3 from 0 in one direction, and then 3 down in the other. So if I'll be lying to you if I said I knew exactly what that was intended for. I'm assuming that would be for just in between distances, but it returns to 0 on the elevation flawlessly. As far as the windage goes, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 clicks on this is about a mil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And that's it. We are at full, I believe it should be left-hand value. And it returns to 0. Perfect. Let's go the other way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A little bit further. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A little bit further. So looks like it's favoring a little bit more on the right-hand side, but this is designed to just basically set and forget, which I'm really appreciative of. I really like that this is just a standard mil-dot reticle. I would love to see these make a resurgence because they're super easy to understand and they're very effective at their main usage, which is for milling targets, as well as speed and precision. It's as simple as it is. It's extremely capable. One thing I didn't confirm was going all the way up on our elevation turret. The reticle's favoring the right-hand side line by about a tenth of an inch. I'm sorry, a tenth of a mil. But that could just be the scope is slightly cocked inside the mount. This is very impressive. This is really, really impressive. I'm going to evaluate the scope like I would any other scope. And we're going to start off with the lower light performance. It's not pitch black out. It's not middle of the day. It's that twilight zone like around 4 p.m., 5 p.m., late October. Focusing at my precision eye chart at 81 yards, you can make out a lot of detail on the eye chart, the color chart to the top right, and my tracked and target to the bottom right. Moving away from behind the scope, we can see downrange that the colors down there seem a little bit muted, but there's still some good contrast and we can pick up a lot of information. Getting back behind the scope, you can see that the contrast is lacking a pretty substantial amount. That tree that my targets are posted on sort of blends into the bushes that are within 10 to 15 feet of it. It all sort of just blends into one big blob. But considering that this thing is, as near as makes no difference, about 50 years old, and armament hasn't touched the lenses in any way, shape, or form, well, I'm happy to just be able to look through the damn thing. Cropping the image, you can make out a lot of information on the eye chart, which is fantastic. But everything really just blends together. There's almost no depth of field to the image here, and it just seems very monotone. However, it's still pretty damn sharp, and I'd rather have this than no magnification at all. Just to add a little bit of comparison sakes for everybody, this is the look through the brand new Viper HD 2-10 in second focal plane. Of course, it has very bright illumination, but beyond that, optically, I'd say that this edges it out by a fair margin, but not by so much so that you'd be completely lost using the Unertl versus the Viper HD. This was also filmed several months earlier, so you can see there's tons of foliage still on the trees. But as far as the colors go, as far as the brightness goes, as far as the contrast goes, the Viper HD is going to be better in almost every metric. Also, sharpness-wise, I gotta give it to the Viper HD, but it's probably just because it's a new scope compared to something that's, again, 50 years old. Looking further back on my property to just find things of interest, these power lines are around 130 yards, and you can see that even though those tree branches are basically 20 yards out to about 150 to that power pole, and beyond that, probably about 150 or so, everything looks pretty well in focus. There's no real issues as far as depth of field goes on this. Again, I didn't touch the side parallax. I did not touch the parallax on the front objective, and the eyepiece, I got it as close as I could, but it didn't really seem like there was a lot of adjustment to be made. Ultimately, though, right out of the box, I put it on and it looked really good, and I was like, all right, I'm not going to mess with this too much. And the results speak for themselves. It's really not a bad looking image. However, there is a softness to the image, and as we push out further and further, we start losing a bit of focus. More specifically in the outside edges, not at the center. The center always remains pretty solid, but the outside edges, you'll soon see, definitely starts to fall off. But focusing on that tree line at roughly 400 or 500 yards, I gotta say, I can't expect much more from a scope, even a modern scope, let alone something like this. Very, very impressive. If I was a grunt in the United States Marine Corps in the early 70s and I had this, I'd probably be happier than a pig in SHIT. For this segment, I moved the scope 1 pixel farther forward. We're focusing on some targets at 300 yards, and now you can see that softness that I was talking about earlier. I'm also adjusting the elevation, so I'll shut up and let you listen to that. 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. I would say that the image at the center is a lot sharper than it was. Let's see if we could adjust the height of the camera. A bit of shift to the exit pupil, but not terrible. Image looks pretty nice at the center. I'm now going to move the scope 1 pixel closer. I will say that the center looks about the same. The outside edge of the image looks like it doesn't seem as dark. But let's reset the elevation to 0. Even back here, we have to adjust the camera to compensate. Given a pretty solid looking image. At 300 yards, the center of the image is more than acceptable as far as sharpness goes. The outside edge loses a touch of sharpness, but I think it's just down to the optics inside being worn. I don't believe that it's anything inherently flawed with the optical system, because everything else performs extremely well. The image stability, both the reticle and the targets, is near on flawless. But the haze to the overall image is something that you can't really look past, or at least I can't. But again, I'm not buying this to go compete or go put my life on the line. I would buy this to build a Clone Collect M40 rifle or a Clone Correct, Canadian C3 sniper rifle. I wouldn't buy this for recreational use. But if you are, and you do plan on using it, which I really highly suggest that you use the stuff that you buy, because what's the point? But if you do get one of these and you do use it, which I highly recommend that you do, you'll see that you are in for a real treat. Optically, this thing is still very impressive. The stability on it is superb, and the Eyebox on it is very forgiving. The controls are bulletproof. The scope itself is basically bulletproof, and it's a real testament to the overall initial design. I really do like everything about this thing. And it wouldn't be one of my videos if I didn't throw up a quick side-by-side comparison. On the left will be the Unertl C3, and on the right we're going to be looking through the SWFA Gen II fixed 10X. Now, we already know the price of the Unertl. The SWFA is right around $350, but Black Friday will drop that down. The SWFAs are made in Japan. They're fairly lightweight, a little bit longer, and they're very simple optics, just like the Unertl. But they do have adjustable side parallax, fast focus eyepieces, and some excellent target turrets that I really like what they've done with the Gen 2s versus the Gen 1s. Reticle-wise, these aren't that dissimilar from one another. The acronym KISS, or Keep It Simple Stupid, really applies here, and I love it. There's less to think about. There's less to have to worry about or problem solve with. You see a dot, you hold for the dot, or you count with the dot, and then you continue moving forward. The posts at 3, 9, and 12 on the SWFA also allow you to hold for extreme elevation deltas if you had to. And it's really nice that they have the bottom open so it doesn't obscure your target down range. I really love the SWFAs because of this real simple thought process. And the DNA comes directly from the Unertl. Everything about the SWFA is basically a modern day equivalent from the Unertl. And that's part of the reason why I'm so drawn to these scopes, because I like simplicity. I like toughness. I like robustness. And I like affordability. The SWFA has all of those. Now, optically, there's no comparison between these two. The SWFA absolutely 100% beats the Unertl every single time in almost every measurable aspect. But you're not going to be buying the SWFA to throw on a clone correct rifle. Just like you're not going to be buying the Unertl to be throwing on a plinker. If you are, then that's pretty baller of you, and I have the utmost respect for you. The only reason why I'm putting these two scopes side by side is to not put one down and elevate the other. It's to show that both of these scopes manage very similar tasks using very similar procedures. And even to this day, it's still a very effective combination. I love the SWFA fixed powereds. I've recommended them to a lot of people, and every single person that I've ever sent them to has been very, very pleased with it. I might have to buy a 6X just to throw it on a trainer, because I think that would be like the ultimate rimfire trainer for precision shooting. My next and last comparison is going to be a more relevant one. This is the USO or US Optics BFX-10. This is an American-made fixed 10X. And as you can see, this too shares a lot of the DNA with Unertl. If you looked at these two scopes side by side externally, there aren't a whole lot of variables. The USO optically is a vastly superior optic, and just getting behind it, the view through it was monstrous. The controls on the USO were also really good, but I did keep on having problems with the illumination control on it. And that's ultimately part of the reason why I ended up selling it, because it just kept on having bugs. It kept on having issues, and I couldn't stand it, even though I sent it back to USO. I actually would have preferred it if there was no illumination at all, because the reticle, in this case, the gap reticle in mils, was perfectly acceptable in every sort of condition without needing illumination. Scaling on it is wonderful. It's not too thick to the point where you can't see your target behind it, but it's still more than visible enough in almost any sort of condition to be able to read it and use it effectively. I really, really loved this scope, but I ended up selling it only because, again, the illumination was something that bothered me. And if something's not perfect, or at least as close to perfect as I could ever hope for, then it has no room on my shelf. And thus it goes the way of the dodo bird. The reason why I'm bringing this scope into the equation is with USO's limited production MST-100s that are currently out for pre-order. I'm wondering if they'll have a better optical performance similar to the BFX-10 here, as opposed to the Unertl C3. So if that's the case, the $3,600 that USO will be charging for the MST-100s will not only give you a scope that would be clone correct for a lot of people, for a lot of builds, it'll also give you optical performance that is absolutely sensational. So if you are planning on using your rifle to the absolute maximum potential, and you're okay with having something that's not true to form as authentic as possible, maybe the MST-100 from USO would be a better choice. But you cannot argue, you cannot deny that the real deal is always going to be the real deal. And the Unertl C3, sent in graciously by Armament Technologies Incorporated, is as real as it gets. Having this scope in my hands for as long as I have was a joy of joys. Really something special. To have Genesis in your hands, and especially coming from a background where you have had several fixed power 10Xs and you love them and appreciate them, this was a treat that was hard to quantify in words. What else is there to say? This is awesome. It is Genesis for most modern precision optics. The first scope to ever have a mil dot. and to be used in service for 50 years. There's no wonder why this thing is legendary. Is this for everybody? Absolutely not. You either have to be rich just to have stuff that you can buy because you're rich, try to be building a clone correct rifle, which is very expensive and very challenging at times, or you're super buff with optics throughout history, which I don't know if anybody is. I know I'm not. I would love to, but I can't afford it. But at least it's available for the time being. And that's what we really have to appreciate. Armament Technologies Incorporated has made these available to the public at a very reasonable price, all things considered, whether you believe that or not. And I'm sure that they are going to run out of stock as quickly as they put it up available on their website. That's why they're limiting them to 10 per week, because if they threw these up, they'd probably all be gone within a couple of days. And no, I'm not exaggerating. So Armament, thank you so much for making this dream come true. This, to finally grace my table, has been nothing short of sensational. With all that being said, thank you very much for watching. And as always, I'll see you again next time. And a huge thank you to my Patreon providers and my Subscribe subscribers. Without you, this truly wouldn't be possible. If you'd like to support my channel but don't want to join either of those, I completely understand. But you could still help by using my affiliate links in the description below, and or like, share, and subscribe as always. Again, thank you very much.